Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tastemakers podcast. This is, of course, the podcast here on We Know Scripted TV, where we talk about scripted TV and we talk about what's new, what's coming, what's good, what's bad, and all the stuff in between. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and with me, as always, it's Grace. How you doing, Grace?
I'm doing well. Taryn, it was American Thanksgiving down there for you. I kind of celebrated, even though I'm Canadian. I took the day off and ate a lot of food. But I also watched a lot of TV, so I'm excited to chat about it.
Yes. I'm excited to talk about it as well. I feel like it's been a little bit of a slower time here in the world of TV and film. Not for film, actually, if we're really gonna talk
Yeah,
about it.
there's a lot of movies. I mean, this is my favorite time of the year for movies because all of these like Oscar buzz movies start to trickle out. And I get to go. I try and see everything that's out. Um, I kind of appreciate the fact that it's a little bit slower of a TV time because actually think there's a bunch of stuff that has come out that I started that I haven't necessarily like gone back to, but I would like to at some point. So if sort of the trend continues of there not being a ton of new stuff, and I think probably also we have to calibrate this with like how much you and I watch anyway. And when we're like, there's not that much to watch. We're probably still watching like 6 television shows, like keeping up with them or whatever. But there's a lot that I haven't finished that I would like to go back to and watch. So I'm excited about that because I feel like some of the stuff that has premiered this week, I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure, maybe. But yeah, we'll see.
We will see. All right. Well, some things to talk about. Today, we're going to catch up on some of the new shows that released this week. We'll talk about a little bit about Moana, big success in the box office. And catch up on some shows and talk about what's coming in the next week that is on the docket for today. No real big names aside from Moana, I think, in terms of what's here. But we can talk. We can start there because Moana had a fantastic weekend. Moana 2, huge numbers in the box office, beat Wicked. But although another story is that Wicked has held very, very well from the previous weekend. So both movies doing phenomenally. However, I will say I have heard, unlike Wicked, which seems to be very highly regarded, Moana 2 a little bit more of a like landing. Like it's good.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we've talked about this on the show before, but Moana, the thing that I think people are feeling, whether they know it or not, is that this was supposed to be a television show for Disney Plus that they then decided to make into a feature-length film, which I think likely is twofold. One is I don't know why they were planning on making a television show in the first place, but that's fine. And then the writer's strike happened, so I feel like there was this like opportunity that there might not be as the idea would be that there might not be as much out there by the time this movie got released. I think that they're like completely justified in that decision of like deciding to make it a movie instead of a television show. With it is literally the best Thanksgiving weekend opening of all time, I believe, if I have my numbers correctly. Yeah, best Thanksgiving ever. Opens up for $225 million in the US and $389 million globally. So they're completely right. I went and saw this movie. I'm kind of feel exactly as people are saying, although maybe even thinking because my expectations were low that it was actually a little bit better than I thought. But this isn't one that I feel like there's any song. Although I've been burned by this before by saying the music isn't memorable. One time on Post Recaps Theater, Aaron and I said Encanto had no memorable music, only for then We Don't Talk About Bruno to be the most popular and listened to song in Disney history. So maybe don't judge me, but I just think it's kind of like, yeah, it's fine. It's a perfectly good movie. There's sort of been this like, oh, this is kind of what it felt like in the 90s when we had like direct to VHS sequel releases. And I don't think that that's quite true. So I don't know. But I mean, I went to the movie theater and the thing was packed. And I went to Wicked again. It was also packed. So like, I don't know. It's just a popular weekend to go to the movies, I think.
Yeah. Huge stuff. It feels to me like these sort of like family animated movies this year have been kind of top contenders. Inside Out 2 is currently the highest grossing movie of the year worldwide. and domestic. Uh, and Despicable Me 4 is number 3. Kung Fu Panda number 6. And then Moana is already number 11. And certainly poised to jump straight into that top 10 list. So those seem to be like, obviously Deadpool and Wolverine did well, but Marvel has been kind of struggling lately in terms of like they used to be the thing that was just dominating the box office. But yeah, I don't know why. I don't know what the culture is. I'm not really like the culture expert on like why movies are doing well at a certain time, but it seems like that is kind of the trend right now, especially family animated sequels.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I think that if you always look at the box office, like obviously there's this weird time of like 2020 to 2022 even where things get a little bit skewed. If you do look, you're always going to sort of find movies that probably you and I are not going to be at the end of the year being like, this is my favorite movie of the year, but somehow make it onto a top 10 list for box office. Like if you look at 2019, The Lion King, the animated Lion King release is second, Frozen 2 is third, Toy Story 4 is eighth, Aladdin is ninth, and Jumanji is 10th. Like that's half the box office made up with if not like animated films, these like live action Disney stuff. I do think like my theater to for Moana 2 was a complete mix of children, like parents taking their children to see this movie, and in fact, like very small children. Um, and then also adults who like I think Moana is kind of one of those Disney movies that like people seemed to just like be like, oh yeah, it's actually pretty good. And so it kind of like, there it's not exactly like a four quadrant movie, I think, but like, I think anything where you can end up being suitable for children to go watch and then kind of even like kind of capture anybody else, you're just going to do well at the box office. So these aren't the movies that I think at the end of the year I'm going to say this movie is not even close to my what I think is like an amazing movie, but it makes sense to me. I think that it is doing well at the box office. And then Wicked, like I had this big debate. My 8-year-old niece really wanted to go see Wicked. She had just seen Wizard of Oz, the play, a local play, and I was like, man, I want to take her, but it's 2 hours 40 minutes. I did take her, and she loved it, but I feel like she was like basically as young as you could be to like sit through the whole movie, kind of understand it and get it. So like I think Wicked, I thought it was like delightful to watch again. I was very happy to watch it again. But like you're cutting off a big chunk of kids who can go like it kind of is a kid. It's like PG-13, I think is no, it might just be PG, not even PG-13. So yeah, Wicked and Moana just killing the box office.
Yeah. There are some other new things, new shows, particularly that came out this week. And you know, I watched some of them. I think in general, the vibe for the new shows this week, not great. Uh, people, the people did not seem super hyped on many of these new shows. I did see a little bit about Get Millie Black, um, but most of it was pretty like, nah, not super interested. Then we also had The Madness, which came out, which I also did not watch myself. Also seemed a little bit underwhelming in terms of the response. That's the one with Coleman Domingo, which is another like sort of crime drama thriller.
I
And
I
then
watched it, Taran. I watched The
yeah, please.
Madness. I watched one episode. I felt like it was something that I was like, okay, I think I'm going to check out something else. I end up watching The Agency, which we can chat about. But for The Madness, I mean, it's perfectly fine. It's Coleman Domingo. Coleman Domingo is very, very good. I think that this would be a lot worse if it didn't have Coleman Domingo in it as the lead. Essentially, the premise here is that like he is basically like a CNN news anchor who moves to a small town, like a very small town. He gets offered some help by his neighbor. His neighbor's like, if you ever need anything, let me know. And then he does need that. And he goes over, and that's the beginning of something that happens that then nobody else believes might have happened, where they're sort of investigating a crime, but also think, as you would assume by the title, that maybe Coleman Domingo's character has gone mad. And so yeah, I thought it was like fine, like there's such a plethora of things to watch that like I probably will check out more of this just to see if it like picks up a little bit more. But based on the current reception of people kind of like leaving it, I don't know that I will. I honestly, if I was to watch more of this, it would just be for Coleman Domingo. I don't know that there's like a ton else going on here. We've talked about before on the podcast of like you kind of need, even if you're being derivative of something that came prior, you need sort of this like new unique thing. I don't think the madness necessarily has any of that going on. Nothing in this episode I was like, oh my god, I must continue watching. So that's the madness, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of what I figured based on the response. And part of the reason why I was like, you know what, I think I'm good on this one. I think it takes a lot for me to be invested in like a crime drama anyway. Um, because I think they just are often so just generic and similar. But who knows? Maybe. Although I think all those episodes were released, right? That was a Netflix show,
Yeah,
so
it all came out at once.
not likely to have a resurgence in terms of reception. Um, okay, then you mentioned the agency, but first I want to talk about Earth Abides because I did watch that. It also did not have a great reception, but I was like, you know what? I purposely didn't watch the preview from, so I feel like I'm obligated to now watch this. Also, like I'm much more of a sci-fi guy. Anyway, and man, it was boring.
This is Alexander Ludwig, who's from Vikings. I also know him
Yeah.
from Heels, the wrestling show.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he's good in heels.
yeah.
This was I don't know what the purpose of the show is, to be honest. It was just a very meandering first episode. Um the writing was strange. The voiceover was ugh. And I couldn't recommend it at this time. But this one, hey, only one episode released. Maybe it gets better. I don't know if I'll find out, but you
So
know,
so based on a book, right? George R. Stewart's book from 1949. Um,
from
it
1949. Okay, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Um, it it won like the inaugural International Fantasy Award. It has been entered in the Prometheus Hall of Fame. Like the book seemingly has stuff. Although I do wonder, how are you feeling specifically about basically like disease sci-fi? So like, we like one thing I'll say is that like I thought I was gonna be like so out on it, and then like The Last of Us showed up and I was like, oh man, that was amazing. This is right. Earth Abides is based. There's a deadly
There's
disease. Is this
There's a
right?
line that was something that really I was like, whoa. It was something along the lines of like, yeah, the government messed up. They tried to scare people too much with the first one, so then when this one came, people didn't like buy into it or whatever. Um,
Ooh,
I was
no,
like, that's a really strange political message to say in a show like that.
that's too bad. That's all. Yeah, no good. Yeah. Hmm.
Listen. I was half paying attention to the show. I could be misinterpreting the line, but that's the vibe I got from it in that moment. Um,
Did
but yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
in terms of like in general, like I don't mind. In fact, I know a lot of people are like, I'm tired of the COVID episodes, or like I don't want to see this in my fantasy sci-fi or like whatever my entertainment because real life. I'm not usually that kind of person. I think if anything, I'm the kind of person that like wants more of it. Like now that it's something that I've experienced to some degree in my life, like I'm totally down for pandemic content. What I will say is that at least in this episode, very little actual pandemic-y stuff. It's mostly just a dude wandering around an empty world.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, when you looked at like when the pandemic first started, like the number one movie on Netflix was Contagion. So the idea that like people were not going to be interested, I think actually, is to have. I do wonder like that was like remember when they'd be like, just wait 2 weeks and then it will be over, and then every 2 weeks they'd be like, we got to extend the lockdowns, So the more that it dragged on, I wondered like, I wonder whether there's less appetite for it. But I mean, I think that can't be true because The Last of Us was like undoubtedly a success and is all about like it's a little different. It's like
I
super
think The Last
zombie,
of
you
Us
know?
feels more zombie and less real life pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe that's it. Maybe it has to be like a little more fictionalized.
Maybe. Okay. And then I did just check out The Agency, which I thought was definitely, I mean, I didn't watch much from this week, but definitely the best show I watched this week of the few shows I watched this week. I enjoyed it. I think there's 2 episodes out. I've watched one and a bit. I didn't finish the second episode. But this is the show, I believe, a remake of a French show,
Yeah, called The
very
Bureau.
highly
Yeah.
regarded. Um, and it is a spy drama kind of thing. And man, yeah, I really enjoyed it. Again, this is like not exactly my style of show, like 100%. But if they get it right, I'm in. And I felt like they were getting it right. I was really enjoying it. They do kind of throw you in the deep end at first, but I feel like you quickly start to get your bearings. And I'm having a good time. What did you think?
Yeah, so I mean, this cast is pretty phenomenal. It's Michael Fassbender in the lead, who I just really, really like. Jeffrey Wright. You have Richard Gere in here, Jodie Turner Smith. It's really good, and I think that for me, I had not watched The Bureau. I had only heard that people really liked The Bureau and that it was then popular enough that they would try to make this American series. And I also wasn't really sure what to expect. There's been a lot of, I feel like, just in the last little while, we've been watching a lot of this stuff. I feel like that's kind of for me where like the madness isn't working for me super well because there's like enough other stuff that I can kind of like have my fill of the show, even though that's a little different because he's not like a spy. But I watched the first episode of Cross, and there's Day of the Jackal, and all of this stuff that feels a little similarly. I thought the thing that this did really well was Michael Fassbender's character. Basically, um, there's this like love story that's in here in terms of this like woman who he's like falling with, and the idea about whether or not she's fully like a spy or whether like, and so that idea of when you work in something like this department in the CIA, how basically like how could you really be sure of anything that you're doing and whether or not are you spying, or are your relationships real, are people being truthful to you, do they know you're a spy, like all of that stuff. I thought like kind of like the paranoia of being a spy, I thought was just like really excellently done. Even the way that he has this like kind of a unique relationship with his daughter, it's not completely set up as like, you're not here. Like, it's not this typical, like, I'm a teenage daughter, so I'm mad at you. It was far more complex than that in a way that I just thought, like, this is really well done. You have Jeffrey Wright's character who has a son-in-law who he's trying to like feed out information that he knows he shouldn't have. I just thought all of this stuff, the way that this job would affect your personal life, to actually be pretty compelling, and
Mm.
definitely intrigues me to watch more. I thought both episodes were pretty excellent. They're just dropping the two, and then it'll be weekly from here until about the end of January. So I really liked this. I will for sure be continuing to watch The Agency as it releases weekly.
Yeah, just the basic premise is that Michael Fassbender's character is pulled from undercover work after like 6 years, very abruptly. And so what I thought was interesting about this, the first episode at least, was this is not the show about being undercover. This was the show about what is it like to have just stopped being undercover and what kind of impact does that have on you as
Right.
a human being. And there's like a cool scene where he's giving up all of his IDs and old email addresses, and they're all being shredded and deleted. And so the basic premise beyond that is that he got into a relationship that he is supposed to terminate. The first scene of the show is him sort of lying about that, about how it went, at least the termination of that relationship. And so then yeah, plenty of stuff gets added on top of that. There's also like a side story of there's this agent that got arrested, and they can't contact, and they have to figure out what's going on. It's in a very like it's a very like important place and situation, and tensions are high, and Richard Gere is yelling at people, which is very fun. So yeah, lots of interesting stuff going on here. I really liked how sort of like muted but still tense it felt. It didn't feel like it was leaning into. You're completely right about the scene with his daughter, which, you know, normally you'd have like this melodramatic scene where she's yelling at him, but instead you kind of like, they kind of just let it play out, and they let it, you know, she was upset with him for leaving them for 6 years, but didn't have this sort of like over the top reaction, was also just a daughter who was happy to see her father home. And there were a couple other moments that I liked. Like fairly quickly, they had this like they were showing some footage of the arrest, and like just the UI of the software looked realistic to me. Which
Yeah.
was surprising in a piece of media. And then there's another moment too where the Michael Fassbender's character is seeing a piece of news that is very distressing to him while he's talking to somebody. And I feel like so many shows will do this where like they'll be like, "Is everything okay? Oh yeah, sorry. No, it's okay. Everything's fine." And they'll have that scene because they need to show that it has impacted the character. But this is a guy, this is like a spy that's been undercover for 6 years. He knows how to hide his reactions. And so
Right.
they don't do that. And I appreciated that. They instead showed us visually through like the medium of film and television that he was having an intense reaction, even though he was keeping his calm while talking to this person. I appreciated that. I thought that was well done. So just little details, little things that I'm enjoying about this show. I'm hopeful that it continues to do what it has been doing, at least in this first episode or so, for me.
It,
So yeah, I'm interested.
if you find if you find it to be good, or will you then like what does this do for your interest to watch the French version of the show?
Um, I would say it would require this to be like one of my favorite shows to go back and do that. Primarily because, and I used to be somebody that consumed a lot of foreign media because I was a hipster. But the problem with foreign language television for me is that it's just such a large commitment of time to be dedicating 100% of my attention to reading subtitles for, you know, upwards of like 8 to 12 hours.
Yeah.
And there's only so much of that I can do, especially when it's like I'm then the only person that's watched that I know, and and I can't talk about it with anybody.
Yeah.
And if I do, it's like, oh yeah, there's this great French series called The Bureau. You should totally check it out, but nobody will. And so, you know, I've definitely limited my my consumption of such things, much to my chagrin.
Can't tell if it was like one season, I might, and I bet that the fact that it's actually 5 seasons and 50 episodes means it's probably very good.
That's
But
so many things. I like, for instance, I really like the show Borgen, which is a Danish political drama.
mhm.
But I could only get like a season or so. Like the first season of that show, I loved it. It's really good, but it's just like it's such a commitment to watch it and find time to watch it when like any other show I can be doing something else. And even when I'm giving most of my full attention to a show,
I know.
it's like I can still check out for a second and not miss dialogue, but not when it's a foreign language, which is really like the killer.
I was gonna say a thing that I thought would apply to Borgen, a TV show I'd never heard of, but it doesn't. It turns out it was all added to Netflix in September 2020. Because what I think was going to be, I do feel like sometimes a show will pop up on Netflix as international and people will watch it, and then you can have the combo about it. So like The Bureau is on like Canal Plus, some French thing that I have to figure out how to watch. I feel like that's gonna be tough for me to be like, all right, I'm gonna get my Canal subscription if I even can get one. But like if it's on Netflix, sometimes you can. But this Borgen is on Netflix. If anybody's interested in Borgen, it's all on Netflix. So, you know.
It's a good show. You'll recognize some actors in there too.
Okay.
So uh that was pretty much it from the new things this week. Anything new that you watched?
No, the only I saw Maria, the the Pablo Larraín movie with
Oh, I
Angelina
keep meaning to watch
Jolie.
that.
I thought it was very, very good. If you like his other two films in this sort of like trilogy, I kind of love this type of thing. There was always the Cornetto trilogy, which was Shaun of the Dead and
Mhm.
and the one that I really love that I can't believe I'm blanking on the name, Hot Fuzz, and then there is End of the World. I love those movies. This is the trilogy where like they're all just completely different movies, but it's along with Jackie and then Spencer. There is no doubt in my mind that Angelina Jolie will be nominated for this performance. It is quite incredible. The production of this movie, I keep feeling like there's these things where it's like, oh yeah, you can't do this unless you do it as a movie. The way it blends the past and the present. So she's like, the movie is about Maria Callas, who was known as this quite famous opera singer, one of the greatest opera singers of all time, and also had a little bit of an image of being like a diva, an original diva. And it's set at the end of her life uh where she is like losing her voice, like she is not quite, she's just like her health is deteriorating, flashing back to these moments where she's like singing a song now, but then flashing back to these moments of when she sang it in a concert hall in front of like a sold out crowd. It's just excellently blended, as she also is being interviewed at the end of her life. It's really quite good. I really liked it a lot. If you like those other two movies, Jackie and Spencer, I think you'll definitely like this. Otherwise, I think it's worth it just for the Angelina Jolie performance that will probably get her nominated. Although every year, Taryn, it's like I kind of feel like the lead and supporting actress categories for Oscars are just like so competitive, as opposed to like the men's side, which I feel like sometimes it's like, yeah, I guess this person could get nominated. It's like I think she's gonna get nominated, but there's a lot of really deserving female performances this year, so we'll see. But I really liked Maria, so yeah. It comes to
All
Netflix
right.
on December 11th, I believe, so you can check it out in theaters, but it's also coming to Netflix.
Okay. Okay. There it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So some things to catch up on.
Mm-hmm.
The franchise finished.
Mm-hmm.
I got nothing else to say about that.
I yeah.
It never got good,
I gave
unfortunately.
I gave my critique of it earlier this season where I felt like it's kind of just like missing the mark on the satire. Unfortunately, I feel like the one thing it has going for it is that it's like the episodes aren't long. That I feel like I could just like binge it in a weekend. But we'll see. I'm not
This one truly, like, I shouldn't have watched it, and
right.
not nobody. I don't want to say nobody should, but like, I do not recommend.
Fair enough.
I don't know why I watched the whole thing. Um, we're going to talk about episode 3 of Dune Prophecy very shortly. I will give my immediate thoughts, though, here, which was I hate it again.
Dune Prophecy? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair
It
enough.
was a bad third
They
episode. We'll
yeah
have much more to say about it, but
they made a very weird choice, which was to be like, remember how we did this exposition about the past? We're gonna go to the past in episode 3. It's like, okay, all right, sure, fine.
they were doing clunky exposition dialogue within flashbacks. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I definitely feel like this is a show that's just like sort of bogged down by some of these like giant creative choices that I don't necessarily. I wonder, to just give some credit to the showrunners, whether this is like there's other reasons why they had to structure it the way they structured it, and it's just it feels like weighted down. But if it could just be like freed of those, there's such a good little story in here. But
yeah.
yeah.
Well, while I'm talking about things that have disappointed me, as I've continued season 2 of Bad Sisters,
Uh-oh.
I'm a little let down so far by season 2.
Uh-oh.
It was very much a season of television where I was like, what are they going to do? And now that I've sort of found out what they're doing, I'm kind of like, okay.
Is it in a sophomore slump? Do you feel like it?
Well,
Jess is
okay.
saying in the chat, Def not
What
as
I
good as season 1.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
what I discovered is, it was based on a oh, now I forget which country it was from, but it was based on a previously made show that only had one season. So this is entirely new content,
right.
and doesn't quite live up, I think, to it. Doesn't have like the whimsy that the first season did. I think it's a little darker, but like in not like the most fun way. And also they made like a really bold choice with that certainly contributed to that I also didn't feel like was like handled as well as it could have. So unfortunate, but yeah.
Yeah, Jess is saying that there's like some choices here in season 2 that makes it a lot less fun.
Yep.
Which I think, yeah, everything that I was sort of pitched on, I haven't watched it, but everything I was pitched on the show is that like, yeah, it's a dark comedy. And so if it's like not as much of a comedy, then that's a little rough. You're about halfway through, is that right? Are you caught up? I don't guess I don't want to. I assumed where you were in the season, because they've
Of
aired half the episodes, I think,
yes,
of season 2.
I'm roughly halfway through Bad Sisters
Okay.
season 2. Um and I also finally saw Smile 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah, tell me.
I thought it was great.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's really good.
Did you know
Great.
that that is the boyfriend? Did you know that that's Jack Nicholson's son?
I
The
found that out
Yeah.
afterward.
Can I tell you a little fun is that one week we do the podcast and then we typically come up with a title and we need to make a graphic. And so we decide what pictures we want to use. And I ended up sending Jess over about 14 pictures of different people from the Smile movies. And then I said, well, as is tradition, I should probably end every single communication we have from here on out with that pic, because every time I go and open the message pickup, there's a picture of like Jack Nicholson's son, like someone from Scream. So every time I message Jess, I always cap it off with a picture from the movie Smile, which is very disturbing. But you liked it. There's some really cool like scenes and ideas in Smile too, I think.
Yeah, I thought it was really fun. Honestly, I think it was better than the first one. And I think that a lot of that comes down to like feeling a little more comfortable in its own mythology. I think that there were some cool choices, filmmaking choices made, some fun like oneers that they did, different shots. It reminded me a little bit of The Substance in terms of like how it decided to use its camera, which I thought was really fun. Yeah, I thought it was very, very good. I think there are reasons why some people might not love it, but I liked it. It maybe not the most like unpredictable movie in the world, but I don't think it needed to be.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some notion of like there's a thing that happens at the end of Smile 1, which then directly is the beginning of Smile 2. And there's
Yeah,
some people that are like, I wonder if we just had a stuck there. And I I do think that there's the chance that like they did sort of miss out on getting to make that movie and then do this movie. And then the only thing about this is I actually want to give the movie a ton of credit and the Smile like lore. They're kind of playing in pretty well trodden territory of like what happens if you are like haunted because of the trauma that exists in your life, you know? And that's pretty common horror movie stuff, but it does just feel like it kind of does it so well that it's like, yeah, okay, fine. I'll be on this ride. So, but the other thing is that like I don't really feel like we learn that much more information. This sounds like a critique. It's really not. I think it's impressive that they can do it despite not really giving us a lot more. I will say the thing that they do at the end of the movie is very interesting for if they decide to do Smile 3 because
there's all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
it is and I really hope they like take that swing rather than almost like backtrack on what happens at the end of the movie. So that's fun. Smile 2 is fun. It's good.
Was fun. I also am mostly caught up with the Jackal. The Jackal, another kind of, I wouldn't call it a spy, but it's very much like it feels like a spy thriller almost, but it's mostly because the the titular assassin acts like a spy often.
Right.
I was really enjoying it for the first 5 episodes. What I said was at the end of the fifth episode, I was like, oh, really? And I would say that unfortunately for me, the next like few episodes have continued to kind of be like, oh, really? Okay. All right. I think the biggest issue for me is that it feels like they're really stretching this out, and I'm starting to get a little bored and frustrated with that. So we'll see. I think I saw that this was renewed for a season 2 as well. So that's strange to me, but we'll see.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow, this is a wild Forbes article that says, "Is the Jackal good at retirement planning?" Is that a thing? Is that a thing from this? Yeah, it's a picture of Eddie Redmayne. All right. Well, anyway, um, the other one I want to chat about is Silo, which I
Yes.
think after a very, again, not to harp on it, but pretty bad episode 1 is really just like hitting its stride. Steve Zahn is so fun in his role
Mhm.
that he's playing this season. Mike and I are very much enjoying that. So through 3 episodes, it is worth, I think, picking up and continuing if you were a little bit dismayed after episode 1. I know not everybody was, but I certainly was, and Mike was a little bit too. So, good
Yeah, I mean,
episode 3.
yeah, for what it's worth, so season 1, I was like, first 3 episodes I thought were fantastic. Second 3 I thought were like the slow ones, and then the final 4 I thought were good again. So
Right.
we have hit the first 3 episodes of Silo. It started with a bit of a slow episode, Silo season 2, I should say. But I don't know if it's going to continue with that kind of arc structure. But I'm hopeful because I'm definitely enjoying. And again, I think that episode 1 was fine, just a strange choice for where it was placed. But the next 2 episodes have been very good. I think the third episode was the best so far. Was the best balance. I think that we keep saying it, but if they had just released episode 1 and 2 together, I think that would have been perfect.
Yeah, because
Um,
episode 2 does like it has both storylines. They're both pretty interesting. Just the one wasn't enough to do with just Rebecca Ferguson hanging out in the silo.
well,
So
I like episode 2. Episode 2 is basically like one. We don't want to spoil too much, but like there's 2
there's
separate storylines now.
yeah,
And so I think episode 3 was the first one to really combine them in the right
that's right.
way.
Yes,
So if you had
agreed.
just done episode 1 and 2 together, then that would have been fine. Um, all right, anything else to catch up on, or should we talk about what's coming?
That's pretty much what I have been watching. Yeah.
All right. Well, there's not a lot coming.
I
Couple
kind of want
things.
to I kind of want to start with something that's not a new release, Taryn, if that's okay.
Okay.
Have you heard about the sort of the hottest ticket in town, at least in New York City, which is the re-release of Interstellar on IMAX? Have you heard it? Have you seen? Have you? It's
I
sold out all over New York, and Toronto is actually like delayed the release, so you actually can't buy tickets right now. But resale tickets for this movie are going for like $250 in New York right
Oh
now
boy.
to watch Interstellar again in IMAX, which I just think is kind of fascinating in terms of like this being like I think the like is going to the movies like dead. I think that this Interstellar doesn't show us that like the movies is or isn't dead, but there's still an audience who so desperately wants to go watch movies and watch it in that experience. And I feel like perhaps it's not a thing that everybody does, but it becomes more of like a hobby that can sustain itself. I also was trying to get tickets for an early release of The Brutalist. I wanted to watch The Brutalist in 75 millimeters again before it comes out on Christmas Day. And that is sold out in Toronto. I can't go see it. So I do feel like these like specialty niche, like come watch it in the best theater as it was imagined, as it was intended. There is something to this, like, the fervor of that. This is not like they're not gonna like break the box office records with Interstellar re-release, but like it's a very popular ticket in New York right now.
This is interesting to me. One, because I thought this had already happened.
Yes.
But two, I was seeing Interstellar stuff lately. People talking about Interstellar like it was a classic, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Why are you talking about Interstellar like it's a classic? Like it's not even Nolan's best movie." And it like I feel like it just came out, and then it's like, "Oh yeah, it was like 10 years ago. Is that the 10-year anniversary?"
Yeah, it's the 10
It's
year
like
anniversary.
okay
Yeah. So there's a
for
one week exclusive release of it in
for
70
younger
millimeters
people, it's a classic, I guess. I don't know.
in New York, California, Texas, Arizona, Indiana, and Florida. And these are like sold out events that you
Yeah,
can't
so
get tickets to.
I just started looking, and the nearest like proper IMAX 70 millimeter theater to me here in San Diego is in Irvine, and they when I'm looking at tickets for this movie, yeah, completely. I mean, they don't say they're sold out because there's like one seat at the very top right front.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, that's
it,
right. Yeah, uh-huh. Like
it's pretty
looking back,
wild.
it's weird that you have to look backwards to watch the movie, but you do.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'm looking at like 10:30 a.m. on a Wednesday, and okay, that one. No, sorry, this is a Tuesday. 10:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. There's more in the front row.
You could take some friends to sit in the front row, Taran. Yeah.
I could probably not see this movie in this theater if I wanted to. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just think that that's really interesting, as, like, a thing that's coming. It's coming later this week, the end of this week. People are gonna go watch Interstellar again for this sort of, like, limited release thing that I think is just an interesting little thing that's happening that's, like, sold out that you could probably find a resale ticket for, like, 250, Taran, probably.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there are a couple of new shows coming out, but really, I mean, actually, let's talk movies first because Grace, I didn't find any wide release movies coming.
There is one wide release, which I think is Y2K, which is the Kyle Mooney, um movie. I believe it's a wide release this weekend. Um, I really like Kyle Mooney and I like him as a
It is wide. Yeah.
um director as well. He didn't direct this. He wrote Brigsby Bear. If you haven't watched that, I think that one is very very good. Um, it's about, I believe, a child who is obsessed over a television program called Brigsby Bear. And he is here. It tells the story of a captive man raised in a bunker since he was a baby, where he obsessed over a children's television program called Brigsby Bear. So it's Brigsby Bear.
Mm.
I liked it. Y2K is coming out. It's an A24 film, so it does have that like it's a disaster comedy. I believe as if the Y2K thing happened, as if Y2K happened. I
Okay.
do
Yeah.
yeah, I think that that could be kind of fun. So,
The credits, Kyle Mooney's credits as a writer, Brigsby Bear. He also worked on Nathan for You,
yeah.
and now Y2K amongst other shorts and podcasts.
Yeah, so, he was on SNL for a long time. This one seems pretty fun. It has, Julian Dennison is, you would know him from a lot of the Taika Waititi films. He played, kid in a lot of those. He recently was in Godzilla versus Kong as well. Rachel, Zegler is going to be in this. Kyle Mooney as himself. Fred Durst as himself. Tim Heidecker is gonna be in this. I think this is gonna be quirky and weird and should be quite fun. I believe Night Bitch is getting a limited release this week as
Yep.
well, if you're able to check that out. I was not super high on it after I saw it at TIFF. But if you go in with low expectations, I actually think you might, it's fine. Just don't expect like a masterpiece, but it's fine. It's
This movie reminds me of a thing that happened to me as a child, which was that I really wanted to go see the movie Hellboy,
yes.
because I thought it looked cool, but I didn't know how to ask my mom to go see Hellboy, because that was a bad word,
Is
and
this gonna be one
so
of those things where like you'll see that the ticket sales for like Moana 2, it won't it's actually a great time for a movie like Night Bitch to be out because Moana 2, there'll be a ton of ticket sales, and then you can go sneak into Night Bitch. Yeah.
What I did was I said, can we go see the movie It's the Opposite of Heaven Man?
That's amazing. There was a wrestler growing up. His name was he was the badass Billy Gunn, and I'd always call him the Bad Apple, Billy Gunn. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's great weekend to go see. Actually, even better, buy a $250 ticket to Interstellar, then sneak in tonight. Night Bitch is fine. It's basically a stay-at-home mom who sometimes transforms into a dog. It's Amy Adams. She got a big standing ovation at TIFF. I actually think that she is quite good. Scoot McNairy's also in this movie as well. He's pretty good. He's fun. But yeah, it's this movie is I think trying to say a lot and maybe doesn't execute entirely on that. But That's what's coming out. But there are a
Yeah.
few television shows this week, Taryn. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
there are also plenty of other limited releases, but I feel like I've tried to stick to wide mostly. I'm not even like on top of film releases as much anyway, but yeah, there are other things like The Order, and Werewolves, stuff like that. But I think I think what I'll do is we'll try to like talk about those if they kind of pop off,
Yeah.
and then eventually maybe get a wide release, or we'll because I also don't want to double talk about them when they get a wide release when everyone can actually see them.
I go
Um,
to the movies a lot, and a lot of stuff that plays limitedly. I'm very lucky that I do live in Toronto and I can see them. It's one of like the few Canadian cities, so I feel like I can give a good sense of like whether or not if I do check them out. Like there's a movie called Oh Canada that played at TIFF as well. It's a Richard Gere movie. People do seem to like it. I was not encouraged to check it out at TIFF, so we'll see. But now I feel like it has a little bit of buzz. So there's stuff hidden, I think, in everything else that's happening. But
Grace is our movie
I
aficionado.
think so. Yeah.
Yes, there are some shows. Just a couple though that popped up for me at least. The first of which is Black Doves, which is the new Keira Knightley movie. Which again, what I was saying about Interstellar is that, and I know this isn't news to anybody, but like it's wild how often you'll like hear about a thing or a person and then they have a thing coming up. And it's like I was just reading an article from about Keira Knightley talking about her experience on Pirates of the Caribbean.
Mhm.
Um, and then, oh look, she has a new show coming out, and it's like, yeah, that's how media works. But
Yeah,
it's
'cause
also how that whole
yeah,
like psychological effect works. But like,
it's true.
I think it is planned.
It is. I mean, it is. I mean, often the press release for some of this stuff happens actually much sooner than the show comes out. Like all the interviews get done, and then there's
It's
this.
a clever way of marketing. Like, oh, this is like a famous thing that this famous person was in. Remember that? Oh,
Right.
and look, she's doing a new thing. It's like it's not technically advertising for Black Doves, but it kind of is. Because I
Right.
was like, oh, Keira Knightley, yeah, I like her.
So I will say, Taryn, Black Doves, another spy thriller. It's Keira
Yeah,
Knightley. The thing I'm excited about is Ben Whishaw is in this, but
yeah.
it's basically, I mean, the synopsis is she begins a passionate affair that may endanger her secret identity when her lover becomes victim to London's underworld and her employers send an old friend to protect her. So, more spy stuff.
Yeah, I will say outside of like the two leads, Keira Knightley and Ben Whishaw, which who I like both of them quite a lot. Like nothing about the premise is super interesting to me. But I'll give it a shot.
I also think this is one. I mean, there's so much out right now. So we talked about like the madness getting binged. This is gonna be binge release because it's Netflix. Like,
Oof.
does that? Yeah, that's my feeling. Is it hurts it to be like you're just
Oh
gonna
wait,
turn off
wait. This
all of
is
it at once?
hold on though. This is the guy that did Giri Haji.
It is the guy who did that. Yeah.
I really liked that show. I thought that was a good show.
He also did the Lazarus Project as well, I believe.
Hmm.
Yeah. So you know.
Okay, I'm a little more interested. I I just googled Joe Barton, and it went to the Wikipedia I clicked on was a politician, not the filmmaker.
Um, this Joe Barton is also slated to do the next Cloverfield sequel as well, and then he did that Union movie, the one that was like Mark Wahlberg and Halle Berry. So it's really tough, Taryn. I feel like it's like, but maybe this is a little bit of like one for them, one for me. Have you heard of this strategy where it's like,
Yeah.
so maybe the Union was like he got a lot of money to do it for Netflix so that he could also do Black Doves with Keira Knightley. I don't know.
Mhm. Who knows? All right. Well, we'll check it out. We'll give it a shot. We'll let you know how it goes. There's also a new show called The Sticky, uh, which
I'm
is
very interested
Margot
in this one,
Martindale.
Taryn. And
What's that?
I'm very interested in this one. I don't know if you,
Yes.
but this is about the most famous Canadian crime of all time.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, it's basically about the Great Canadian Maple Syrup Heist. Uh,
Ruth Clark. Of course, her name is Ruth Clark. That this role was made for Margot Martindale.
yeah,
Uh,
in the '60s, there was this No, sorry, 2011, 2012, 9,000 barrels of maple syrup valued at $18 million were stolen, considered an inside job, they think.
She steals a
So,
bunch of syrup.
yeah.
Listen,
So,
I'm in. Margot Martindale.
I, um, somebody else is in this that I quite like. I saw her doing the news rounds this weekend.
Chris Diamantopoulos.
No, it's Jamie Lee Curtis is in this as well.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
not. Oh, there she's a guest star. It says.
yeah. hmm Chris Diamond, he's pretty fun. He's people would recognize him from he was in Mrs. Davis
Yeah,
last year. He's been in a bunch of stuff. You would notice
yeah,
him as
he's
soon as
good.
you see him. Yeah. The Siggy. Probably released by the time you're hearing this, and I probably should have done this way earlier, but Star Wars Skeleton Crew will release
Yeah.
the first 2 episodes. I have a special announcement that I can't believe I'm bearing within 50 minutes, but I'm going to be covering the show with one Owen Knight from Survivor. We're going to be chatting
Oh,
about Star Wars Skeleton Crew. He's a ginormous Star Wars fan. And we're going to chat about it weekly. A little bit
can,
later for the premiere this week, just because of some Houston RHAP traveling.
Mhm.
But the episode should come out at some point on Wednesday, where we'll be recapping episodes 1 and episodes 2. So Owen Knight and I chatting Star Wars Skeleton.
Can you sell this to me? Because I saw this and I was like, okay, Star Wars show. And then it was like the whole cast is kids
Yeah.
and
So
Jude Law.
yeah. So I
And I
don't.
was like, oh, is it going to be like really, is it going to be like really, really kids showy?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that for part of our thought here is that like it is a Star Wars show, and I think that any Star Wars show, like I think like the Acolyte showed some promise. I'm intrigued by this. I do think I am a huge coming of age genre fan. I love coming of age shows. I also think like if you do think of for me stuff that's like Mando works because it's Grogu, but it's like I love this trope too of like the is it the wolf and
Mhm.
the cub is the trope, I think.
I
Um
think so.
this is set at the same time as The Mandalorian. Um I don't know. Kids are tough. They either like are, you know, good or they're not. But the show also has Carrie Condon and Nick Frost. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see. I don't know. Owen and I are gonna check it out and tell you how it is. And
Yeah. I
it's 8
mean,
episodes, so it's like dropping 2 this week and then weekly from there. It should be done about mid-January. Yeah.
I'm down for kids shows, but they need to be like, you know, not kids shows. You know what I mean? So we'll see.
John Watts is directed the Spider-Man movies. He also directed Wolves. He is
Oh
directing
yeah,
the first and last episode of the show.
we were just
Uh,
talking
Bryce,
about him.
Bryce Dallas Howard is directing an episode of the show. I think she had one of the better ones. And also the Daniels are directing an episode of the show. The Daniels being the creative pair behind Everything Everywhere All at Once. So it has some like star power, I think, behind the show. So we'll see. I mean, the big deal, Taran, I think, is like, do we want this to connect to Star Wars, or do we not want it to connect to Star Wars? I would
No,
bet if
please
you're,
no.
but I bet if you're setting it at the same time as Mando, does it not seem like Jude Law's probably going to be in the Mando movie that's coming out? Like,
Maybe
probably,
the
right?
premise is four ordinary kids search for their home planet after getting lost in the Star Wars galaxy, which sounds like kind of a cool premise. Like oh, what is the world for four lost kids in the Star Wars universe? But if like Grogu shows up, then all of a sudden it's like all right.
Can I tell you though that as like somebody who I have nieces who and a nephew who I think would like Star Wars, but like what Star Wars is there to show them? Like The Force Awakens is pretty awesome and I like it, but then then it's not for them. And Mando is probably the right answer. And even then, I feel like the more it goes, the more it becomes like whatever. Like Obi-Wan Kenobi, like that felt like it was a show for like, people who were like, all right, let's watch Ewan McGregor again, so you had to watch. So I don't know.
That was me, and it still wasn't for me.
Agreed. So I do think I recently bought my niece the first Percy Jackson book. I feel like she's like almost at the age where she could be reading it, or we might read it together. But then she can watch the show as well, because this is some of my favorite ways to watch and read is to like watch the thing and then read the thing, or vice versa. And I do feel like I would be very excited for like a Star Wars skeleton, a show that I could show, because they were kind of intrigued by Grogu. but like that show hasn't been on, and also got kind of like then he had to watch Book of Boba Fett. So
Ugh,
anyway,
don't even get me started. All right, there's one other show that's starting, Creature Commandos, on Max. It's an animated show. It's a DC show, and I believe being billed as kind of like the first big foray into the new reset universe from James Gunn, as a maybe a little bit of a tester, I guess. I'm not sure, but Creature Commandos, I'm not familiar with the comics. I'm sure it has comic grounding to some degree. But this is kind of like, again, the DC has been trying this. James Gunn has been heading DC for a little while in terms of its creative direction. And what I've heard from about this show so far is that it is very James Gunny. So, in that it's very like I wouldn't say gross, but like what is it, like in your face, like lewd and jokey and crass, and all of that stuff, and so I think a lot of people, maybe not a lot of people, but some people will be looking at this show as an indicator for where like the rest of this universe is headed, including like the big films coming up and some of the other shows. I was actually a big fan of Peacemaker, the first season of that show. So, I think that will I be super interested in this in Creature Commandos? Probably not, but I'll check it out.
I kind of have a thing where like I've done pretty much all of the MCU movies and most of the television shows. I know like kind of exactly where I left off. Like I have a big blind. I think I stopped with She-Hulk. I didn't watch it, and my problem with the James Gunn stuff is like I know that they're not incentivized to do this, but I need somebody out there to do this for me, which is like what do I need to watch or don't watch in order to like basic, because I heard that the first thing was going to be Superman, but now this thing could be like it could or could not be connected to everything else, and then like Peacemaker, so then that is connected or
Peacemaker
it's not
season
connected.
1 and Peacemaker season 2, I think technically have different line levels of canon.
Oh my god, that's fine. Like I'm a wrestling fan, Taran, so I don't need to get on my high horse about like continuity and all of that stuff. Like it really doesn't matter to me. But like if I'm sitting being like, wait, what? I feel like that's like not great. And I like
And let
again,
me tell you, I did the thing because I did this with Marvel. I went back and I watched everything in preparation for like the Avengers movies and all that stuff. I watched all of it and I had a good time watching Infinity War and Endgame. And then I got lost again because of all the shows that they put out that were very mediocre. I was like, let me do the same thing with DC. I watched through all the DC stuff. Let me tell you, not worth it. Don't do it. Don't do it. There's a couple of fun things in there, and they're mostly the James Gunn stuff, I would say. So I think the hope here is that like this is their fresh start for like the 5th time, and you can, I would assume a show like Creature Commandos is not necessary for like everything, and it's just kind of like a fun little animated show that they're putting in the context of their universe. But we'll see. I have a little bit of faith in James Gunn. I think he makes fun stuff. But yeah, it's a big mess right now, and so this needs to like really land and get a little less confusing.
I mean, it's whatever. But I think the other piece too to that is that like I think so much of what worked with first of all, what worked to start the MCU is that it was just movies. It was just movies for so long and you could just watch the movies. And it felt like you could reasonably get through like a movie and be like, okay, I've watched more of
Yeah,
the
and I
MCU.
think importantly, the MCU had plenty of mediocre movies, but a
Right.
mediocre movie is fine. You can
Right.
watch a mediocre movie and be like, yeah, I watched it and now I know the context. You can't watch a mediocre show. Like you can't be in order to understand. Like you can't be like, give me 6 to 12 episodes of a mediocre show that I have to watch now. All of a sudden, that's devastating.
Well, and the other piece of this, I think, too, is that I would agree with you that I think it probably makes sense to be like, okay, like James Gunn, like get it together, like get all like do, and if some of that means like he's going to do it, like that's great. Eventually, you can't just have everything be James Gunn stuff. It can be like under the umbrella of like the James Gunn DC universe, but so much of like what works about Marvel, and even what I feel like has been working recently and might work for them, is the fact that they can be like, okay, Agatha's over here doing this thing that's like spooky witch camp, and also we're gonna have, um, you know, Captain America.
Captain America, yeah.
We're gonna have this like spy thriller over which like hilarious that like we're being inundated with spy thrillers right before it's about to come, but like all of that to say of like eventually what's so nice like if it's so big what's so nice is that you can kind of be like, oh yeah, this over here and this is something different. If they're all made by the same person, it's a little bit tough to feel like, how is this so much different than that? I will forgive them. This is a complaint basically about the future, is that like they basically need to set this up to be able to do that. I'm totally fine. And apparently like Superman, from everything I've heard, is supposed to be pretty like I don't know, not super James Gunny in the way that like Suicide Squad is. Like Superman is a pretty like wholesome. He's
It'd
got
be
a
hard to
dog.
do a Superman movie in the vein of the James Gunn style.
You can have a bad guy James Gunn guy, like who's like whatever, but like Superman is pretty wholesome. So anyway, that's like a future problem. I'm fine for them to figure this out, but already I'm feeling like, how are they effing up the rollout of the DCU? Like just tell me whether, and they're not incentivized to tell me this is or is not part of it, because what that means is like it is I'll assume it is and I'll watch it, and then later they can say like, actually no, that wasn't, and it doesn't matter that you watched it, but they want me to watch it now thinking it might be connected. So a little frustrating. Can I segue timely into another spinoff, Taran? There's another spinoff coming this week, and again, it's not really scripted TV, even though we're on the We Know Scripted TV feed. Did you know that Pop Culture Jeopardy is coming out this week, hosted by Colin
Oh.
Jost on Amazon Prime?
Oh no, I didn't.
Yeah, it's going to be on Prime Video. I'm kind of intrigued by this. I'm excited to watch. I think when the casting call went out, I feel like a lot of people in our circles were like very excited at the idea of Pop Culture Jeopardy, because I feel like we'd all be pretty good at it. That comes out on I think on this Wednesday. They'll air there. I think it's interesting that it's a streaming show.
Yeah.
But maybe makes sense. But yeah, hosted by Colin Jost this Wednesday.
Are they gonna do like a binge release or like a weekly or
I
daily?
I have not been able to find this. I would be very surprised if they dropped it all at once. Jeopardy does not feel like the show to like
Yeah.
binge watch. The other thing that I think will be interesting is I believe it's in teams. I believe it's like teams of 3 instead of like 3 people, but I could be wrong about that.
Huh.
I feel like I thought that I saw teams of 3 tackle categories from Broadway. That could be that to me. Teams of 3 reads like
Like 3 teams of 3, but it could also technically be 3 people compete.
it could be classic Jeopardy of like 3
Yeah.
people are on the show and they're considered a team. But my thinking is that it is teams of 3.
I don't know how you would do teams in Jeopardy.
Well, my thought is that like more like Family Feud stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're just teams. There's just like 2 teams of 3. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what it looks like. It comes out on Wednesday. I'm kind of intrigued by this. I think this could be very fun. Also,
Hmm.
the funny part is that like Jeopardy does often have questions about pop culture. But and Colin
Yeah, but
Jost is
we
the
don't
host.
want
I think he's gonna
any of that other smart stuff in our show. We just want the pop culture.
Colin Jost is very interesting because I think he's like a little bit potentially on the verge of like everyone being like, I never liked Colin Jost anyway. So we'll see. Interesting experiment coming out this week. Yeah.
All right. Anything else, Grace?
There's one other one that I don't think either of us will end up watching it. I believe it already came out. It's on Netflix. It's called The Trunk, and it is a South Korean mystery show that I'm wondering whether
Ooh.
if I don't know if I will remember to watch it, but if anybody has watched it or is going to watch it, let me know, because it just seems intriguing. In the South Korean series, a trunk washes ashore, exposing a secretive marriage service and the peculiar union of a couple deeply entangled in its web. That's what the Netflix descriptor says.
Let me tell you, the amount of South Korean dramas I have gotten sucked into,
Hey,
and then run into this is a problem because they are good, but then they are so many episodes, and this one is only 8, so not that many, but it's 8.5 hours of content in 8 episodes. and I just get there's too much, there's too many.
Well, I'm kind of turning over the Tastemakers label to somebody else who will tell us like I liked it or I didn't like it. So we'll see.
Please, yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, especially South Korean media, I think probably some of my favorite stuff. Certainly, my favorite movie is a South Korean movie. My favorite director is a South Korean director. They're both the same. And I think they make really good stuff. But the shows I've had a harder time with in general. So if you're able to point out like, oh, this one's really worth it, like I'd totally be down.
We'll see.
All right. Well, that's what we have for you then this week on the Tastemakers. We'll be back next week talking through our reactions to Black Doves, The Sticky, and Creature Commandos, amongst other things. Anything to plug, Grace?
No, I think I've done all my plugs throughout the course of this podcast. I'm writing for Parade Magazine, talking about new shows that are hitting on streaming each week, so you can check that out. To see if maybe I definitely list things in there that we don't talk about because I don't think it hits our radar, but they are airing and maybe you would like them. Like The Trunk, I wrote about that for Parade this week. So yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, that's it then. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. Make sure you subscribe to We Know Scripted TV on YouTube, on the podcasting things, or all of that stuff. Plenty of other content on the feed as well that you can check out. But in the meantime, from now until the next time we talk, thanks for joining us. We'll see you then.